Hi, thank you for joining me today. We are going to talk about my preferences. My preferences are settings that allow you to configure how Genesis is going to work for you specifically. Anything you set in the My Preference file will save when you close out of the program, so you don't have to redo it every time. And I'm going to go over all of these with you really briefly today. My Preference file can be accessed anytime the program is open. So click My Preferences, and we're going to start by looking at the general preferences, starting with the workplace view. It can be multi-document, which you see over here, or tabbed. Let me show you what that looks like. So when you hit tab, you can see that they've moved up here to the tabbed option. I'm going to go back in here, and anything for the regulation is what default labels you want to use, default label regulations you want to use. So you set that here. Auto open reports. Check any report here that you want to automatically open each time you open a recipe. No data string. You will have seen probably the double dashes in some of your reports. That indicates that there's no data for this particular nutrient. You can change that to anything you want. We use double dashes, but you can change that here. And then decimal places, that's going to be how specific your nutrient data is going to be. So the date format, this is how you will set the date. Month, date, year is very common for the US. Day, month, year would be common in the UK, for example. Round when resizing. The round when resizing feature simplifies quantities and units when a recipe is increased or decreased to make a specific number of servings. So the program is going to round to the nearest reasonable fraction within 5% and convert to larger units of measurement. If you choose to round a 1 serving recipe, for example, that calls for 1/3 cup milk to a recipe that serves 50, then the program is going to round the amount of milk to 4.25 quarts instead of 16.666 cups. Now let's look at the display preferences. The display weight is going to be the weight that shows up here in the heading. And the HACCP heading is going to be how deep you want your HACCP regulations to go when they show up in a report. Flag missing values. This is a little bit different from the no data string. If there's something that is missing data, then the missing values will be flagged in your totals line, and totals line with the greater than symbol. Show notes. We can show notes on the recipe screen or the ingredient screen. And then we can change the title of the notes here. Let me show you what that looks like. So you see down here, we have the notes and it says the new note text in the title here, whereas before it just said notes 1. I can also show cost on the header up here and common name. That's the common name that you entered on the new recipe or the recipe information screen. It's the shortened name for your recipe. And the common name will show up in different reports and the ingredient statement. Search limit count. Sometimes you want to limit the search to, for example, 400, just because our database is so extensive that if you search for everything, it might get bogged down. So you can limit that here. The reset preferences. You can reset your warning dialog. That's going to be anything that showed up when you were going to close a recipe, or anything that you checked, don't show this again. If you reset the warning dialogs, those will reappear. And then you can also reset your preferences to how they were initially, and you can reset any Windows settings here. Next thing I'm going to look at is the Foodless display columns. This is anything that shows up over here on your recipe display. And let's say that I want to show my ESHA code and the total weight. I'll check those. And then I can also go over here and select calories and protein. And we can see what that looks like. So now you see that I have the ESHA code, the weight, the calories, and the protein showing up. Now back over here, let's look at the reports. This is going to dictate what your reports look like. So you can change the report font, and you can force the report to wrap the words so they go down to a different line if that particular text is too long. The print scale, that's self-explanatory. It'll print at 100%. And you can show the icons, which are these little pictures over here. The margins, that's again for the printed report on the page. And you can print the title, which is going to be whatever your reports or your recipe's title is, along with the title of the report. Again, here you can change the font. You can choose to print the date. You can add page numbers. You can also add a header text, which is going to be different from the title. It can be anything you want, and change its font and position. And you can also add a header image here and some footer options. Now, report sections, these are going to be little extras that show up when you print the recipe report. The recipe report is what you see on screen, the food item and its quantity and measure. But you can also prompt the program to print other data on that screen, like the notes or the allergens or different report data. You can do that for the ingredients, composite ingredients, menu labels as well. Now, the Reports Plus can't do a lot with this. You can add a header image and some header text, but these are largely not editable, these reports. And then the groups. Because, like I said earlier, our database is so extensive, when you're searching for a food item, you might want to tell the program to not search in these particular groups or databases, and that will reduce your search returns by quite a bit. So if you don't want it to search in, say, the children's database and you don't want it to look for candy, you can set that here. Label preferences, these are different from your label settings. These will be the default label preferences. So you can save a default settings file to share with other people on in your office. You can set the default nutrition facts font and add a default header and footer. Set your export resolution here and the default languages. Sometimes these will apply only if there's a bilingual label. And then what allergens you want to show up. Here's your color preferences. This is the colors that come with the program. You might want to change these. Like, I want my Escher recipes to be white, and I think I want my user recipes to be a light gray, so I'll click define colors and go over there and set that. And maybe in my ingredients, I want my text to be blue and my background to be white, and then maybe my text to be white here and my background to be green for the user ingredients. You can mess with this all you want. Anything can be set to your own color preferences, including the calories and fats reports and the protein quality report. These are new groups. You can set new groups for your ingredients, composite ingredients, recipes, advanced labels, and menu labels. And this is just anything that you newly create will automatically belong to this group. And the groups. There are a couple of tutorials on groups that you might want to look at to understand more why you would use groups. Okay, and thank you. This concludes this tutorial.